Good evening. Caitlin will be back with you on Monday. Tonight, President Biden is dodging questions on the 9 new tax-related charges against his son Hunter, and the White House is refusing to comment, only saying Mr. Biden, quote, loves his son and supports him as he continues to rebuild his life. Hunter, however, is lashing out at House Republicans today after his second indictment in 3 months, with a bold claim saying that they want to kill him to take down his father.
They are trying to, in their most illegitimate way, but rational way, they're trying to destroy a presidency. And so it's not about me. In their most base way, what they're trying to do is they're trying to kill me, knowing that it will be a pain greater than my father could be able to handle.
Well, Republicans have been relentless in their pursuit of Hunter through their own investigations, but this indictment didn't come from the GOP. It came from President Biden's own Justice Department, a special counsel who was appointed. The younger Biden stands accused of engaging in a 4-year scheme to avoid paying at least $1.4 million in taxes on income and instead funding a lavish lifestyle of drugs and escorts, including spending nearly $700,000 on payments to, quote, various women, and nearly $200,000 on adult entertainment between 2016 and 2019. These charges in California are in addition to the gun-related charges filed in Delaware. So how does his team plan to fight all of this? Well, let's get straight to the source with Hunter Biden's own attorney, Abbe Lowell. Abbe, thanks for being here.
Hello, good to be here.
So I've been going back through the plea agreement, the statement of facts, and didn't your client admit in open court to not paying the same amount of taxes for these exact years that are in the indictment?
Not exactly, Pamela. In the plea agreement that was negotiated and filed back in June, what Hunter was willing to do was to admit, like millions of Americans, that he did not pay his taxes on time, that they were the taxes due, but that was only amount of a delay, not what happened today. Let me put this in perspective since you asked about the last. Let me show you. On June the 20th, the U.S. Attorney in Delaware thought after a 5-year painstaking investigation that the appropriate resolution was to file 2 misdemeanor late payment charges in a piece of paper that was barely 2 pages long. Yesterday, that same U.S. Attorney has now done a 56-page, 9-count indictment. No facts have changed from the years that he's been investigating after 5 years. The law has not changed. So what people need to stop and ask is, why was this okay in June? And this is what he's doing now. The only change that has occurred has been the enormous pressure put on by Republican members of Congress, former President Trump, in order to demand that something happen about Hunter Biden. That's what's different between then and yesterday.
And it's certainly fair to make the point of the gap between the plea deal, the 2 misdemeanor charges, and the 3 felony charges of 6 misdemeanors in the indictment. But as you well know, and I know you've done countless of plea deals for clients, if a defendant pleads guilty as part of the deal, the whole point is to get leniency, as I'm sure that you know. And this deal fell through, right? This plea deal fell through. And do lawyers for Hunter Biden take any responsibility for not putting in writing in that plea deal that he would get immunity for any other charges moving forward? Because that was one of the big sticking points of why this plea deal fell through.
If you look back the 5 months ago when all this happened, there's blame that mostly falls on the part of the prosecutors. It was their paper, they wrote it, it was their design, it was their structure. And when the judge asked questions, rather than defending what they had agreed to, they ran away from it. But let's also put in perspective what happened yesterday as well as then. Now, where's the fairness, justice, and decency in this? The charges in this new tax indictment talk about a period where Hunter was at the lowest ebb of his addiction. And like people in that regard, and I know everybody in America either has somebody in their family or friends who suffer from addiction, he certainly did things that he's not proud of. But wait, what happened since? He got himself sober in 2019. And he paid all of the taxes that are owed in this indictment more than 2 years ago with interest and penalties. Nobody in that position would be charged the way he was yesterday. Nobody.
You would admit as an attorney that having an addiction wouldn't absolve you of potential criminal acts. And the plea agreement that he agreed to does talk about the fact that in that 4-year period, he made millions of dollars. He was doing business deals. He had several clients he was representing as a lawyer. So if he was able to do that, why shouldn't he also, like every other American, pay his taxes on time? And in that plea deal, and I just want to read part of it for you, Abby, to get your response, of which, again, he agreed to. It said, at the time his 2018 tax payment was due, Biden continued to have substantial income and the ability to pay his tax liability. By late May, Biden has spent almost the entire sum on personal expenses, including large cash withdrawals, payments to or on behalf of his children, credit card balances, and car payments for his Porsche. He admitted in court, and again, you can't use this.
He didn't admit in court this was a piece of paper that didn't get filed because the prosecutor walked away from a deal. But I want to point out, again, looking at what you just read from, every year, millions of Americans are late in their taxes. Hunter, as part of his accepting responsibility, was willing to say, I did that. But the most important part of what you're not saying and what happened yesterday is that when he became sober, what is one of the first things he did? Paid all of his taxes, paid the penalties and interest. And the most important thing is when people are in his position, and you want to talk about what he did and every other American who you say pay on time, when the IRS says that you made a mistake or you're late or you do something, do you know what they do? They audit you. They talk to you. They ask you questions. They ask you for backup. What did the government do in this case? They charged him in a 56-page, 9-count indictment with no notice and no warning. That's what's different. What's different is you, me, and the people you're saying would have been treated differently. And there's just a very easy explanation. I want to just go back to the basics. June 20th,
I want to pick this apart.
yesterday. What happened in between?
Okay.
All the Republican pressure.
And it's fair to make that point that this is politically motivated. As his defense attorney, look at this and look at that. A couple of things, though. You talk about he got sober, he paid it. Well, in the plea deal, the statement of facts, it talks about in May of 2019, he got sober. Then past the October extension deadline, November, he started to pay it back. But the government is alleging that he filed false tax returns, that he made up deductions that weren't accurate. So I'll let you respond to that. But also, you're talking about the average American here. They wouldn't be treated this way. Well, what about the more than 2,600 cases for similar crimes brought last year? I've got this case that I just printed out from 2 weeks ago in New Jersey. It was a tax case treated like a criminal matter for less than the $1.4 million.
I don't know the case you're talking about. I can tell you this. We have presented to the U.S. Attorney and the Justice Department the statistics that you're looking at, I suppose, but more importantly, we went through the cases. I can tell you that in the District of Delaware and other places, a person who has filed late, paid on when it was then paid and full with interest, etc., and had no other issues about them, and made mistakes that both went to his advantage and went to his disadvantage. That same tax return that they're saying has deductions that shouldn't have been, has income that he should not have claimed as income. And when that happens, I am telling you, the result in the tax division of the U.S. Department of Justice is not to bring a standalone misdemeanor count, let alone misdemeanor counts, let alone what they did yesterday. It is usually resolved in a civil fashion. One of the things we presented to the government when we met, when his prior lawyers met, was to point out an example. There is a partner at a law firm in Washington, D.C., who didn't pay $7.8 million at all, never filed. And what happened to that partner in a law firm was allowed to resolve it civilly. There are all kinds of examples. But again, I tell you, it doesn't matter what you or I think. What matters is what David Weiss thought on June 20th. And on June 20th, David Weiss, after 5 years, thought a 2 misdemeanor late payment was the way to resolve this case.
In exchange for a guilty plea, we should note, which is often a plea deal. It gives to leniency, though. I just think that context is important for viewers.
People would not go to jail pleading to a misdemeanor of late filing after they had already paid their taxes 2 years later. That just wouldn't happen.
Well, let me ask you this, because certainly reading through the indictment, first of all, it relies a lot on his memoir, and I'm wondering if you stand by everything he wrote in his memoir, or if you will argue.
Everything he wrote in his memoir, it's his memoir. But this is what we will stand by. In the years of
but
this
hold on, I want to follow up. Yeah, let me ask. Okay, so sounds like it's a memoir. That's his accounting. You're not going to contest that.
Well, I don't know what part you want to refer to.
Well, the indictment, throughout the indictment, it talks about, how he was
addicted, how he spent money lavishly, how he made the most unwise decisions about how he spent his money, his addiction, his junkies, the quote escorts.
Right, and how instead of paying taxes, he was spending millions of dollars.
Do you know somebody who's
on
been
personal-
addicted and somebody who makes bad choices
Look,
and nobody who understands?
I'm talking from a legal perspective. Are you going to get in front of the judge in a courtroom and argue about his addiction as his defense? Because many people have addictions and they don't just get off the hook because of that addiction. It doesn't
Indeed,
absolve you. And if
actually,
he is
when
able to have
willfulness-
clients according to the plea deal and make millions of dollars and do business those 4 years, I mean, are you saying he was addicted and high and out of his mind for 4 years straight and couldn't pay his taxes?
I am saying that in the period of time of this indictment, he was at the worst part of his addiction. I am saying that the priorities that he made between spending money lavishly and figuring out how to get his taxes paid on time is the mistake that he's admitted. But I'm telling you, what's the result of those mistakes? And the result of those mistakes in every other circumstance would not be a 56-page, 9-count indictment for somebody who paid their taxes in full 2 years before this indictment was brought in the circumstances. That's the bottom line. And more importantly, treating people same no matter what their name is key. And I don't want to be harping on it, but I want you and all of your colleagues and people who think something bad happened that should be addressed to have the U.S. Attorney answer the question. Why was 2 misdemeanors with the possibility of no jail with a plea agreement the right result in June? And why are 9 counts about the same events what he did yesterday? Tell me what happened in between.
And we've
other
covered
than
that ground and our
Chairman
viewers
Comer,
can see it
Chairman
all.
Jordan, Chairman Smith, former President Trump. That's the difference.
And you mentioned Comer, and I want to get to him. Let's listen to what Chairman Comer said today in the wake of this latest indictment.
And my concern is that Weiss may have indicted Hunter Biden to protect him from having to be deposed.
Yes.
In the House Oversight Committee on Wednesday.
So what do you say to that? And will Hunter Biden
So,
comply with the subpoena to testify on December 13th?
The day that I can make sense of the things that Chairman Comer says is the day that I should be nominated for some great educational prize. I would tell you, if I understand what he's saying, is that the special counsel, now used to be the U.S. Attorney, decided to bring these counts to help protect Hunter Biden in some fashion or another. If that's what he's saying, that almost is ridiculous coming out of his mouth as it is for me to repeat it. If he's saying that somehow the U.S. Attorney did this to protect the U.S. Attorney, I'd agree with the chairman. He's doing this because he took such unbearable pressure and heat and criticism on June when we did the deal that he reneged, and now he's going to show over and over again that he is not going to make another mistake that subjects him to that kind of political pressure. If that's what Chairman Comer means, I might agree with him.
And you say he reneged. Both parties went into court that day with the plea deal at hand, ready to agree to it. The judge raised questions, right? And there was the immunity question was really a big sticking point. But
it was the prosecutors who, right after that,
But
withdrew
lawyers
it.
also defend their clients and usually put everything in writing and make sure
But
that
you're
everything's
saying,
locked
we use
and
the word
locked.
reneged, and I want to be clear that the entity who reneged on the deal the next day or the next week was the prosecutor who literally communicated and said the deal's off.
Okay.
Not that it was tweaked to deal with the judge's questions, but it was off.
Okay, let me quickly follow up on the question about will he show up for the congressional deposition on December 13th?
Oh, you're asking about what's going to happen next week?
Yes.
Hunter and I and his advisors are thinking about what we have exchanged with the committee, and we'll make the decision in the next days before that date comes
So you
to us.
have no decision yet as of right now. Last question for you. You're making the argument that this is basically political persecution, that this is unfair for Hunter Biden, your client, because of his last name. Should he be pardoned? Will your client apply for a pardon?
That is just so far down the road to even remotely believe. It's not even in the lexicon of what we're talking about. So when we say political pressure, to put a finer point on it, in the District of Delaware and most places, no person has ever been charged with the gun charges that Hunter was charged with unless it was part of a crime, multiple guns, felony record, never happened. Nobody who did what Hunter did with the issues that he had at the time, who paid his taxes 2 years ago and was part of this arrangement with the government, has ever gone from 1.5 pages of a misdemeanor to 9 counts and 56 pages, including felonies. It just didn't happen.
All right, and I'll let you read this case from a couple weeks ago too, of other cases where an American didn't pay taxes and it was treated as a criminal matter.
I'm not suggesting that there's none, but I'll tell you what, I'll come back after you give me your case and I'll show you how the cases that should be compared will show that the person who's being treated differently is not the person in your case, but Hunter.
All right, you're welcome back anytime. Thank you so much, Abbe Lowell. Appreciate it.